The United Earth ship Nightborne slid along the dark skin of the Kuiper Belt, with her running lights dimmed to embers. Out here, where the sun was a white pin and the planets were rumors, the ship's hull threw back the faint scatter of distant starlight. Her spine was a spear of composite truss studded with docking collars and sensor dishes. Her torus habitats turned with patient grace, a slow carousel of day and night for the 400 souls aboard. On the bridge, Captain Riave watched the stars through the forward canopy as if they might answer her. The canopy was a kindness. Actual navigation took place in the holography, pooled above the command well, but they valued the old ritual. Eyes to the infinite, breath steady, shoulders loose. The Nightborne had been built to outwait emergencies, to be methodical in the places where panic killed, and they had learned to make a habit of calm. Repetition confirmed, Science Officer Lin said, voice careful with the gravity of new things. 13 pulse packet, irregular envelope, repeating at 31.6 seconds. No Doppler drift, strong in L-band, dirty sidebands in S and C. It's not natural. They tore her gaze from the canopy and let the holo sky wrap around her, a sphere of blue-white points overlaid with vector glyphs and numbered tracks. At the periphery, beyond Neptune's wind, a red halo marked the signal source. Deep in a field of lonely ice, show me the structure, she said. The pulses unrolled as spikes on a timeline, each one different in amplitude and width. Lin's overlays flattened them into integers. Not primes, Lin went on. Not Fibonacci. Not a hash I recognize. There's a carrier phase that flips halfway through. But the flips don't map to binary in any clean way. It wants to be language, but it's also something else. Beacon, asked Yara Kate at comms, twisting a stylus between her fingers. Emergency, buoy lore? Buoy would broadcast more efficiently, Lin said. A lore might waste power if the intent is to seem weird. But this looks like it's walking a knife edge between comprehensible and not. Like it's tuned for a receiver that isn't us. Earth Command's assessment, they asked. Cade flicked her wrist and brought up the latest burst. Preliminary, unknown structured emission. Do not respond. Orders are to localize and observe. They let the orders settle. Don't respond. It was the correct, cautious move. Humanity had been vaccinated against romantic first contact impulses by a century of close calls, with far less exotic things than aliens. Rogue A is that learned to flatter. Automated harvesters that misread transponder etiquette and chewed through a ring station solar. Sales, the long, embarrassing fiasco of the Venusian microbes that turned out to be to research teams salting each other's sensors. Don't respond had kept ships alive. Bring us to station, keeping to AS out from the centroid, they said. Quiet profile, run passive arrays, no active pings, launch a drone pair on an oblique. I want parallax and redundancy, said Nika Petrov at helm. The floor's subtle hum changed timbre as the Nightborne blood velocity. Executive Officer Matteo Arden leaned close to Vey. He had the unworried look he wore when he was worried. If it's artificial and it's this loud, someone wants to be heard. Or someone died with the transmitter jammed open, they said. We'll know soon enough. The drones left their cradles like drops of ink sliding into black water. Their drives were cold gas and reaction wheels only, their heat budgets set to monkish austerity. On Vey's display they became to faint diamonds creeping along widening arcs, their optics sniffing for reflected sunlight, for thermal lace, for anything that glinted wrong against the regulated sky. Thermal bloom, Lin said. After a minute that felt longer. Not big, but warmer than background. That's new. Angle, they asked. 3 degrees up from ecliptic. 8 ahead of drone 1. The bridge exhaled as one when the first image stitched itself into focus. Not a rock, not ice, not the familiar ragged geometry of debris. It was a curve, a smoothness edged by fractal bevels. The eye wanted to call it a shell or a wing, but it kept refusing the metaphor, as if it had been made to slip past associations. Cade forgot her stylus. That's built. Structure length call at 80 meters if it's at the centroid, Lin murmured. Surfaces not reflective in any conventional sense. It's less reflective than the void. Negative albedo, no. Absorptive metamaterials, most likely. Petrov whistled. That's a stealth profile that wants to be stealthy, and it's Still leaking enough heat for us to see it, which means it's running, Vey said. Or pretending to. Second bloom, Lynn said. Bearing 6 left, to down. Larger, same profile. To contacts, Vey said. She kept her voice level. Tag them Ghost 1 and Ghost 2. Maintain distance. Continue passive. Ghost 1 is moving, Petrov said. No, space is moving around it. The holo rendered a ripple round the nearer object. It was like watching glass flecks under sea pressure. Stars behind the curve smeared and snapped back into focus. The drone's clocks hiccuped a handful of microseconds, out of sync and then reconciled with a shrug. The kind of minor absurdity software learned to ignore. Gravimetric shear, Lynn said softly. They're pushing on the metric. On what? Kate asked. On space. On the thing that has to be flat for our equations to be smug. They're pressing like a thumb. Fine, Vey said. We stick to our plan. Quiet. Observe, don't. The deck shuddered as the Nightborne's escort, a lean corvette called Kite, bled power to its point defense and rolled to present a harder profile. Its captain, Ella Hart, was competent and impatient, and had been balancing those traits on a knife for as long as Vey had known her. Hart, Vey said over tight beam. Stay cold. This is not a posture drill. Understood, came Hart's clipped reply. There was a beat. We've got a third bloom. It's inside our drone arc. Maintain, Ghost 3 just. Hart's voice flattened mid-syllable, like a wave tugged back by a stronger one. Every line on the Nightborne's tactical board lifted and shook. Bridge. We are illuminated, Cade said. Something pinged us, not electromagnetic. The drone gyros jittered. EMP, Arden asked. No, deeper. The coolers spiked. It felt like. The inside of my teeth itched. Vey didn't allow herself to look at him. All stations. Alert condition 1. Close blast doors. Spin habitats to combat gravity. Lockout non-essential draws. The ship clenched. Bulkheads sealed with a series of heavy sighs. In the habs, families and off-shift crew moved with the practiced, unhappy efficiency of people who had rehearsed fire drills as often as breakfasts. Ghost 1 didn't hail. It turned its dark curve toward Kite. Ella, Vey said. Already cold and quiet, Hart answered. There was bravado in it. There had to be. A corvette's best armor was the universe's indifference. The beam came violet and silent, visible only because it made the void visible around it. Where it touched Kite's forward shield, a corona blossomed blue-white, brief, savage. The corvette's skin went through a tight convulsion. Metal that had known deep space for a decade suddenly didn't know how to be metal anymore. It crawled into new shapes. It unremembered its bonds. The forward third of Kite broke into incandescent pollen. Radiation spike, Lynn shouted. Then caught himself. The spike had happened and been over 1,000th of a second ago. Gamma and something else, something our dosimeters don't name. Kite is venting, Cade said. Voice small and terribly professional. Life signs dropping. Point defense, deterrent pattern only. Vey said. No offensive fire without authorization. Arden's hand hovered above the arm of his chair. Rhea, we will not fire first, Vey said. She said it to herself as much as to him. We will not be the species that makes a mistake at the edge of the dark. Asterisk Ghost 2 angled like a bird deciding on wind. Its curve kissed the astronomical line between human ships and pale sun. Ghost 3 bloomed again. A violet mouth opening. The second beam stitched space and bit Kite amidships. The corvette kinked around the bite and came apart into clean, humiliating pieces that tumbled like metals dropped in a gutter. The screams that wanted to happen on the Nightborne didn't. Training put a layer between impulse and action. Grief could come later. Vey tasted copper, realized she'd bitten her tongue. Survivors, she said. It was a command. To pods launched, Cade said. One failed to seal. The other, we have it. One life sign. Weak. Bring them. And Vey said. Now, Ghost 1 accelerating, Lynn said. No burn. Just more thumb. Helm. Hold us in shadow of the belt mass, Vey said. Make us smaller than a rumor. Copy, Petrov said. His hands were gentle on the ship, a transmission, Cade said. She sounded as if she'd taken a breath she hadn't meant to. It's not addressed. It's just on. Route to science, Vey said. Lynn's console poured sound into the bridge. It wasn't sound humans were meant to hear. Mechanical translation. A roll of peaks and valleys mapped to pressure waves, but it was what they had. It was harsh, it was layered. It grated like storms over sheet metal, like whale song through a grinder. For a moment it tripped simian reflexes and Vei's heartbeat jumped, uselessly ancient. I can almost, Lynn said. He stopped. The worst kind of pause. What? Vei asked. It's self-referential, Lynn said. It keeps folding its own pattern into itself, like an equation that uses its answer to redefine its question. And in the fold motif, it repeats every 13. If I smooth it and decimate, he worked. The bridge waited. There, hear it? Vei heard a shape inside the storm. Not a word, not meaning the way the human brain filed meaning, but a contour that felt intentional, like the sharp edge of a tool. It's the same motif as the pulse train, Lynn said softly. This is a voice and a key. It expects something to unlock. Only we don't have the lock. Or we're not meant to, Arden said. Ghost 2 pivoted, slowly enough to suggest disdain. Ghost 3's beam licked the empty space where Kite had been, and moved on, as if testing its own reach. Broadcast non-combatant markers, Vei said. Standard, old code and new. Blink lights if you have to. They haven't shown optics, Cade said. But her hands were already moving, transmitting on all civil and military bands. Optical Morse on hull strobes, laser tight beams at all 3 targets. Pattern says do not fire. Medical rescue in progress. Drone 2 is gone, Lynn said. No drama. The icon winked out. Not destroyed. It's elsewhere. The telemetry vector went to Nan. Not an accident, Arden said. Nothing about this, as Vei answered. She let the silence stretch until it nearly broke. Then weapons. Officer, stand by the lance. Don't spin it. Just put your hand on it. Aye. Came the reply from below decks. The particle lance slept in the Nightborne's spine like a dangerous second heart. Powering it would light the ship up like a funeral pyre. Touching it was a promise the universe could smell. Medbay has the pod, Cade said. Single survivor, not registering military implant. Civilian minor, most likely. Massive burns. She caught herself again. Dr. Soul is working. Vei nodded once, a private motion. She had known Ella Hart long enough to imagine, with the unhealthy precision of the recently bereaved, the shape of her last seconds, the snap decision to put the ship between danger, and something softer, the unadorned courage of it. She put that image away because there would be a time to take it back out and let it cut. Ghost 1 is captain. It's aligning, Lynn said. Not toward us, toward the sun. On speakers, Vei said. The storm voice thickened. The motif inside grew clearer, as if proximity or alignment mattered to it. Lynn changed filters, peeled off layers. For a heartbeat the fold unrolled, and in the bridge air there was the ghost of a cadence that almost sounded like language. Then it slid away again, leaving a taste like ozone and old coins. They don't know we're people, Arden said. He wasn't guessing. He sounded as if the thought had arrived as a fact. Or they don't care. Cade swallowed. New. Order packet from Earth Command, she said. Shorter than the last. Maintain posture. Do not initiate. Retrieve survivors. Confirm status. We confirm, Vei said quietly, to the empty part of the room where Command lived. Status, first contact achieved. Party hostile. No warning. Ghost 3's beam cut the dark again. A mining derrick on a nearby rock abandoned, inert, utterly uninvolved, flared and went away. That settled it. The line Vei had been balancing on dissolved under her feet. All hands, she said, and her voice went shipwide. This is Captain Vei. What you just saw has no precedent. We made every signal we could. We were met with fire. The corvette Kite has been destroyed in a single hostile action with no warning. We are retrieving a survivor. We will not initiate, but if fired upon we will not suffer a second strike. We are United Earth, and we will defend human life. On the bridge, Arden met her eyes and nodded. It wasn't consent. It was the recognition that consent had been taken from them. Point defense to full aggressive detune, they ordered. Make us a bristle. Helm, keep the belt between us and those things as long as physics allows. Comms, Keep blinking in every language we've ever loved. Science, she glanced at Lynn. Find me something gentle before I have to be unkind. Lynn's mouth twitched. I'll try, he said. The Nightborne turned in her cradle of black ice and starlight and made herself ready, far ahead. The ghosts moved without hurry, like predators that had never learned the meaning of prey. Somewhere deep in the ship, the Lance's capacitors regarded the future with sleepy hunger. Vey let herself put one hand on the railing that circled the command well. The metal was cool and real. Her throat was dry. For a strange moment she remembered. A night on a Terran beach, years ago, where the sea had roared and flung up phosphorescent surf, and the stars had looked like they were falling. She had been smaller then and the world simple. She let the memory go. Mark it, Yara, she said. Log the exact time. Logged, Cade said. August 14th, 2163, ship's time. Mark this as well. Vey said, United Earth ship. Nightborne entered the war when the aliens burned without warning. There was no ceremony to it. No anthem, no curtain drop. Just the hum of a ship readying and the thin, cold light of the outer system. And in the dark, 3 quiet curves that had decided what they were. Outside, the violet mouth began to open again inside. The Nightborne watched with steady eyes. They did it the way you did every hard thing in space, by checklist. Power to the cranes. Extend the lattice nets. Spin the nets to keep them taut so bodies didn't fold when the ship turned. Navigate the glittering cloud that had been the Corvette. Kite with thrusters small enough to notice their own patience. Log every fragment with a tag, even if you knew it would never match a full name again. Dr. Soul met the one living survivor in medbay. A woman with ore dust ground into the lines of her hands. Her skin showed patterns no burn ward had ever. Catalogued lattice discolorations like frost that hadn't decided what to melt yet. He worked without commentary, only the steady inventory of pain. When he finally surfaced on a channel to the bridge, he sounded as if he'd aged a decade and traded the years for information. Cellular damage is not strictly thermal, he said. Whatever they're using Auntie's bonds and lets the atom try to be something else. If she lives, it will be because her body can tolerate brief physics being wrong. Understood, Vey said. Keep me updated. They ran comms hot and silent, spreading wideband stillness like a veil. Yara Cade kept the blink code going on the hull strobes even though the aliens hadn't shown. They watched light with eyes. Lynn sifted the ghost's layered voice for something softer than intent and found nothing. When the order came down, it was a string of sensible verbs wrapped around a fact that changed the shape of the day. Rally E5. Fall back to Europa. Protect civilian traffic. Do not initiate. Retrieve. Report. Europa. Arden said, as if the syllables could grant sanctuary. At least the ice is thick. Thick things break clean when hit right. Petrov muttered at helm, then apologized to the room for letting a thought out of its cage. They turned toward Jupiter. Drives whispered. The belt gave way to a black that felt bigger, for a time. The aliens didn't follow, or they did and saw no point in being seen. Approach to Europa always felt like sliding into a throat. Jupiter filled half the sky like a bruise. The great planet's bands stirred with lightning to slow to watch. Europa itself, small and bright, wore its cracked ice like a map of old thoughts. Plumes arched into vacuum where the moon exhaled. Under the ice the ocean turned in the dark, a volume big enough to drown continents. Warmed by tides and stubborn heat, orbit was busy. The convoy routes were coated with shape and color, each color a different kind of dread. Battered or haulers, carrying only people, their bellies usually full of nickel and water. Sleepy green research tugs flown by suddenly alert scientists. A school of skittery skiffs filled with families that had planned a vacation one day and now knew that evacuation was something you could plan and still get wrong. They hailed Connemara, Deep Europa's main under-ice city on approach. Nightborne, we see you, said Administrator Annika Sorrell on the line. An unflappable voice that had been the day-to-day mind of a world. For 6 years, dock at Highgate 3, we're triaging refugees through the kiln. The kiln? Arden asked. Heat exchanger we turned into a hospital yesterday, Sorrell said. It fits the name better now. Cade's face softened for the first time since the belt. I did my doctoral internship at Connemara. She said, to no one in particular, the coffee in the ring-to cafeteria is terrible. It makes you appreciate everything else. What else are we appreciating? They asked, not unkind. The fact that they have a cafeteria, Cade said, and went back to dancing with flight control. They slid into Highgate's throat. A borehole melted down from the surface and kept glazed. By steady heat, the inner doors opened to a pressure lock as wide as a stadium. Through the thick window the crew saw Europa the way few ever did, as a cathedral of ice. Pillars stretched away into blue shadow. Lights ran like fireflies along transit rails. Even through layers of glass and water and engineering there was a sense that most of the world here was patient and cold and unafraid. The Nightborne didn't fit inside. She made it at the lip, tight lines snapping to hardpoints like firm handshakes. The transfer umbilicals went live. Security perimeter is a mess, said Chief Ganton from the ship's Marines. We can hold the locks, but we're going to be shepherds in a lightning field if those ghost things come looking. Make our lightning taller. They said. Point defense grid covers the locks and anything that moves inside 50 kilometers without an IFF. I want mirror drones around. The throat, randomized oscillation. If they like beams, show them something that will return their love to sender. To sender would be nice, Lynn murmured. We don't know if their beams have a sender in any friendly sense of the word. Then make them feel stupid. They said, working on it. They opened their doors. People came. There's a way refugees move when they've left everything. A tilt to the spine that says the body believes, briefly, that it is luggage. Arden ran triage with a tablet and a voice that made strong people obey without hating themselves. Cade took names and matched them to lists that were never complete enough. Petrov drank black coffee that tasted like old pennies, and guided a tug the size of a garbage can through vacuum so it could nudge a crate to a place. A different tug could catch it. They brought aboard a child who had never seen the sun larger than an angry coin, and who had no idea why everyone kept calling the angry coin the sun. Icefall at Lock 4, security called, stabilized, no injuries. Packet from Ganymede. Cade said an hour later. Shipyard Argus went dark. Last image shows a violet. Spare us the color, Arden said, too tired to filter himself. We know their color, from Callisto. Power grid segmented and holding, Cade continued. From Io. She stopped. From Io there is nothing since an hour ago. The volcano towers were still up. Then no signals. And the servo net says the towers are still standing but empty. Urban myth used to say Io eats towers, Petrov said. Guess myths are patient. They wait for something to be true about them. Administrator Sorrel on priority, Cade added. They're convening the council. They want you there. Captain. They looked at the transfer board. No one needed her hands. Her presence would be a shape that got in the way, Arden, she said. You have the ship. He nodded without looking up from his tablet. Bring back a better plan then. The one we have. The council chamber in Connemara Deep had been a lecture theater in a better year. Its wide-tiered seats were built for debate and boredom, not decisions that drew blood. Holo maps floated like jellyfish in the cold room. Someone had taped a hand-drawn sign over an official placard. Be kind or be quiet. Administrator Sorrel looked like a person who had slept in her clothes because she'd been awake in them the night before. Beside her were the heads of the mining guilds, the research syndicate, the people who kept the water clean and the heat balanced and the city quiet in the ways that mattered, Captain Vey, Sorrel said. She stood to make a point that etiquette could be graceful in a hurry. Thank you for making orbit. Thank you for making air, Vey returned, and some of the room let its shoulders drop a notch. They didn't waste time. Connemara's defensive assets were a spreadsheet and a prayer. To Koilgan platforms with stocks of kinetic slugs. A fan of laser rigs meant to blind icebergs and ambitious pirates. A dozen mirror drones repurposed from a science project about improving sunlight in Habring 3. And some clever software that kept the dome warm with less power than you'd think. The Koilgans can intercept fast and dumb, said the guild head named Rowan Patel. We have never met fast and smart. Fast and smart can still be diverted, said a researcher they didn't know. If its smartness expects the wrong world, that is the right sentence. Lynn said over Vey's shoulder. his voice arriving on her implant. He was listening through her. Ask them to show you their mirror drones. Can we use the mirrors to make their beams waste themselves? They asked the room. Even if not return to send a return to nowhere would do. Their beams don't scatter like ours, the researcher said. They make space behave. Mirrors don't help with that. What helps with that? Sorrel asked. A bigger thumb. The researcher said, and didn't smile. Sorrel folded that into the day and moved on. We've designated you primary shepherd for incoming traffic. The hauler Penthos is inbound with 2,000 souls on ice and 600 waking. They were supposed to have a destroyer escort. No escort has checked in. If the ghosts take an interest, can you make them go away? We can make approaching us expensive, they said. And we can buy enough time for people to get under the ice. But if those things decide to burn the locks, they will. That's the whole war. Then, Patel said into the room's full hearing, we can't stop the blade, we can hold the door. Sorrel didn't look away from Vey. We are not ready to evacuate Europa. Do you understand me? I understand that you love your city, Vey said. I also understand that if staying becomes dying and we can move people, we move people. Agreement flickered across Sorrel's face like a shadow passing a light. We agree. A runner Connemara still used runners because runners didn't depend on bandwidth. Slid a slate into Sorrel's hand. Sorrel looked at it, looked up, and said, they're here, confirm. Cade said in Vey's ear a beat later, 3. New contacts at the edge of Jupiter's magnetotail. Profiles match the ghosts. They walked in on a line you can't walk on. Sound general, Vey said, and sprinted for the lock. The first beam came down through vacuum and painted the bear. Ice near High Gate, 100 kilometers off. There was no sound, only a flash like a sheet of sun torn and used for a knife. The surface didn't melt, it squirmed. Microblisters formed and burst and froze in a film that made the ice look like skin recovering. From a bad thought, vapor flowered. Upward, then fell like dust. Ash fell on Europa silica soot that had been ice a heartbeat ago. Grid live, Ganton reported. Mirror ring randomized if they're aiming at angles. Let's see if they like solving a new trig problem mid-beam. Coilguns. Hold, Vey ordered. Don't waste slugs until we know what we're wasting them on. Penthos on final, Cade said. No escort. They're slow and big and honest. The ghosts didn't announce intent. Ghost 1 tilted and took notice of the honest thing. Petrov slid the Nightborne between hunter and prey because his bones knew how to do that without instructions. The ship's point defense peeled open like a flower and threw chaff and smoke and little mirrors and ugly little darts into a mosaic that wanted to look like disorder even to something that liked order. Beam, Lynn shouted. Coming it wasn't the violet Vey had learned to dread. It was something tighter, fainter. A tickle on the Nightborne's instrumentation that made the capacitors feel heavier. The air on the bridge felt like before a lightning strike. The mirror drones jittered their presets, and their little polished faces flashed wrong. At exactly the right time, the beam, whatever it was, kinked. A portion of it went to a place that didn't exist for humans. The rest shaved paint off the Nightborne's nose and cut a thin line down to the ice where it shook a small valley into glass. Vey's teeth rang. Lynn whooped, unprofessionally. Ganton didn't whoop, but his Marines did. Quickly and with apology. They're watching, Arden said. They learned we could be annoying. Let's teach them bored, Vey said. Keep the pattern changing. If they like predictability, be weather. Ghostus slipped closer. Indifferent to Newton. It made a gesture with its curve and a cluster of Connemara's bluffing laser rigs. Went from confident to molten in the wrong direction. Coilguns, Vey said. 2 shots. Make them work. The shots were slabs of iron shaped by electromagnets and human stubbornness. Pieces of heavy math launched with the kind of grace that would break your hand if you touched it. They arrived messy and fast. The first scraped a field around Ghost 2 that no one could see and reported this fact as debris to the universe. The second had less philosophy. It hit the space where Ghost 2 had been and taught empty coordinates what it felt like to be busy for a second. Not a kill, but not a miss in the old sense. They flinched, Lynn said. They do not like being reminded that things can collide. Good, Vey said. Remind them again only if they're rude. Panthos docking, Cade said, and it sounded like prayer. Make her small, Vay said, and Petrov did, guiding the big hauler until gravity and pressure and engineering did what they had promised to do. When built, Ghost 3 turned toward the high gate mouth. It didn't fire. It looked at the hole in the ice, the way a question looks at an answer and decides it prefers the question after all. It drifted left, right. It made space around it feel stepped on. Then it slid up, disinterested again, as if the absence of a greeting from the throat had been an insult unworthy of response. They don't like holes, Arden said. They don't like our tunnels, Lynn corrected. They like big open emptiness. They're ocean predators confused by caves. Can we make the whole system a cave? Sorrel asked on a shared channel. She meant it. Not today. Vay said. Vay's back-of skull implant hummed. Earth command again. Shorter packets. Fewer courtesies. Say it, Arden said, when he saw Vay's face harden. Rules of engagement updated. Vay said. Directive Black Reef. Return fire with maximum prejudice if fired upon. Prioritize defense of civilian population centers. Experimental systems authorized at captain's discretion. The Lance, Lynn said, almost gently. The Lance, Vay agreed. They had not spun up the particle lance since it had been bolted into their spine and prayed over by 3 different kinds of belief. It ate power to wake and more to think and more to act. It would make the Nightborne shine on every sensor for 1,000th of a light year. It would, if aimed right, write a line through something and teach it regret. Engineering, Vay said. Begin lance warm-up. Minimal signature until maximum is unavoidable. Lock safeties. We are not children, came the reply, thin with adrenaline, down in the belly of the ship. Technicians who loved their machines more rationally than they loved most people moved through stained checklists with hands that didn't shake. On the ice, ash fell again. It wasn't ash because combustion as humans defined it had not occurred. It looked like ash and dusted Connemara's surface domes like ceremonial powder. Kids on the under-ice cameras pressed hands to glass to watch, because kids found ways to be kids. An old miner sat in a corridor and wept without noise, because he had always believed the sky should be above him, and now it had opinions. Ghost 1 aligning, Lynn said. Not at us, at Ganymede Line. We don't get to keep everything, Arden said. It was not permission, it was inventory. Sorrel came on the line, without preface. We will keep the people, she said. The city is a building. The people are the city, understood, Vay said. She watched the ghosts move the way a surgeon watches a patient breathe. We're done being looked at. Ghost twitched toward the Nightborne, and the twitch was fire. The violet mouth opened, and this time it had hunger in it. It reached. It would have eaten her nose and eyes, and then her brain. The lance fired. It was not light. It was a suggestion delivered with force. Be this shape, have this energy, move this way, and the universe, always keen to be told a new story, complied for long enough to matter. The beam the ghosts loved, the behavior of wrong physics, met a different kind of wrongness that fit our math and didn't care about theirs. For the first time since the belt, the predatory curve of a ghost stuttered like a thought interrupted by empathy. Ghosted toward. It did not explode. It did not flower for the camera. It came apart along a seam that shouldn't have been there and spilled a spill that wasn't fluid into vacuum. The spill drifted, slowed by nothing. When a coilgun slug, already in flight, passed through the spill, it spun as if it had been remembered by a magnet and then forgot again. Confirm kill? Ganton asked, because that was a checkbox. Confirm damage, Lynn said. Confirm that they can be hurt. Confirm that we just told them something. What? Kate asked. No, Lynn said. The other 2 ghosts pulled back the distance. A cunning animal pulls back to consider if fire is food. They did not turn away. They did not charge. A new tone rattled through the comms, too low to be sound, and the hair on Vay's arms woke and tried to stand. They're talking, Cade said. They were always talking, Lynn said. We just bought a better dictionary, Earth Command chimed again. Because some offices never stopped doing their jobs even when jobs became different. Captain Vay. The packet said, engagement authorization confirmed theater-wide. Nightborne is designated spearhead for outer system theater until relieved. Support assets will converge on your position within 72 hours. You are empowered to coordinate Jovian defensive grid. Mathematically, they knew how long 72 hours were. In practice, they were the time it took a person to become a different person and still answer to their name. She opened a channel to the ship and to Connemara and to every relay that could carry her voice. Without breaking, she used the tone she saved for when fear had to be turned into work. "This is Captain Rhea Vey of the United Earth ship Nightborne," she said. "We have met hostile vessels at Europa. They fired without warning on civilians and military craft. We return fire. We can hurt them. We will not initiate. We will not run unless running saves lives. We will hold this ice and every life under it. If you are inbound, keep coming. If you are able to fight, stand up. If you are afraid, you are correct. Be afraid and do your job anyway." In the chamber, Administrator Sorrel didn't clap, because clapping was for ceremonies. "We'll keep the water moving," she said. It sounded like a promise the planet had made to her, and she was now making to others. On the bridge, Arden leaned in and murmured too quietly for the wide channel. "We just became the knife," he said. "No," they said, because words mattered. "We became the hand that holds it." Outside, the damaged ghost turned a fraction. As if surprised by the idea of pain, ash drifted on Europa like a thing the moon had invented to mark a day. Under the ice, the ocean rolled on, making no moral distinctions. From Europa's orbit, the Nightborne could see it not flames as on Earth, but cold fire, bursts of radiation where stations had stood, plumes of ice glittering off moons, dots of heat as ships were torn apart and their reactors bled out. The Jovian colonies were scattered jewels across black water, and the ghosts were plucking them one by one. "Telemetry from Callisto Sector," Cade said. Voice low. "Defense lattice failed. Orbital arrays unresponsive. Survivors unconfirmed. Add it to the list," they said. She did not look up. Her eyes stayed fixed on the central holosphere, where 3 crimson arcs cut toward Neptune. "Tell me about those." "Same signature as before," Lynn said. "Adjusting filters, curvature. Pulse emissions, heat suppressed. These 3 are different, though. Larger hulls. They're not hunters, they're carriers." Arden frowned. "Carriers of what?" The answer came when the lead vessel twitched. It did not open its violet mouth. Instead, it shed 6 smaller objects, each about the size of a corvette. The objects lit with the same wrong violet gleam, then darted ahead with impossible acceleration. "Attack forms," Lynn whispered. "Like wasps," Petrov muttered, fingers tight on helm. "Hive sends the sting." The carrier trio did not follow. They lingered in the dark, massive and silent, watching. "Why Neptune?" Arden asked. "There's nothing there but research posts and fuel caches. They're not going to Neptune," Lynn said. His overlays stretched the attack forms. "Vectors farther out. They're going past it. They're on a line toward the Urt gate." They finished. She tasted iron in her mouth. The gate was the edge of humanity, the great folded station that linked to Mars and Earth. If it fell, reinforcements would be cut off. "They're not raiding anymore. They're cutting arteries." Silence on the bridge, heavy and close. "Then we stop them," Arden said. He said it like a fact, as if the universe would arrange itself politely once he'd declared it. The Nightborne raced ahead, burning harder than she'd been designed to. Every reactor cell shuddered, coils glowing faint as though they resented being asked for more. Inside, the crew strapped into acceleration couches that weren't meant for this duration. Muscles ached, skin pressed tight. They went anyway. The attack forms were waiting. They appeared out of folded space, like fish slipping from one current into another. One blink they were not there. The next they were painted across the holosphere as red flares. "Engage Lance." They ordered. "Lock target Ghost Sting 1. Lance at 80%, engineering reported." Capacitors strained, but holding. The shot leapt. This time the particle beam was steadier. Guided by Lynn's constant recalibration, it slashed through Ghost Sting 1. The vessel did not detonate. Instead, it screamed. The bridge crew froze. It was not sound carried through vacuum, but a broadcast, raw and unfiltered, as if the ship itself had decided to howl across every frequency humans could hear. The sound was jagged, keening, alive, God, Cade whispered. That's not machinery. It's not unmanned, Lynn said, horror in his voice. It's crude. Those things are alive. The scream cut off as Ghost Sting 1 disintegrated, spilling shards that tumbled like burning bones. Ghost Sting 2 retaliated immediately. Its violet lance scraped across the Nightborne's shields, boiling away half the drones in orbit. Consoles sparked. The deck heaved. They feel, Arden said tightly, they feel pain. And they answer it. For the first time, the crew saw. Inside, sensor ghosts from the fragments resolved into twisted architecture. Ribbed structures of black chitin fused with metal, cables like veins. Compartments full of fluid where silhouettes twitched. Some of them were shaped almost like humans, but stretched, elongated, spined. Others had no symmetry at all. They build ships out of themselves, Lynn said. His hands trembled on the controls. These are not vessels, they're organisms. Half machine, half biology. The beams, they aren't weapons in the way we mean it. They're projections of whatever physics they inhabit. A survival reflex. Which means they aren't conquerors, Arden said. Grim. They're predators. Worse. They said. They're zealots. Lynn froze. How she gestured to the filtered comms. The ghost's language. Once pure distortion, now carried threads of rhythm, repeated tones, cadences, like liturgy. She didn't understand the words, but she understood the shape of them. It was the sound of belief. They're cleansing, they said. Purifying. The way a wildfire purifies a forest. The revelation fell heavy on the bridge. Humanity's first contact was not with explorers or rivals. It was with a crusade. The battle raged. Ghost Sting 2 and 3 harried the Nightborne, spitting fire and arcs that bent Newtonian law. The ship danced between beams, her hull blistering, drones burning away in droves. Ganton's Marines fired coil slugs into the void, most missing. Some striking, each hit greeted by another alien scream that left blood in human ears. Finally, Lynn found a pattern. They hesitate before firing, like drawing breath. If we time the lance between, we can interrupt it. Do it, they ordered. The Nightborne fired again, threading the moment between breaths. The lance punched through Ghost Sting 2's core. This time there was no scream, only a silence that felt worse, as if the thing had been robbed of its final word. The last attack form, Ghost Sting 3, broke away, not in retreat. It turned, swift and sudden, streaking back toward its carrier. They're calling home, Arden said. No, they said. She could feel it, deep in her bones. They're warning home. They know we can kill them now. Hours later, the Nightborne limped in Neptune's orbit, hull scorched, half her drones gone. Casualty reports trickled in, 32 dead. Most from decompression when the starboard habitat ring vented. Sol's medics worked without rest, stitching, sealing, whispering steady words as if breath could hold bodies together. On the bridge, Cade delivered the message none of them wanted. Earth Command confirms. The alien fleet is massing, not raiding parties anymore. Full formations, converging on the Urt Gate and the inner planets. They know we're here. Arden's voice was iron. Then we stand here. No, they said, weary but firm. We can't hold Neptune. They'll burn us flat. We fall back to Saturn. We buy time for Earth to wake up, for the colonies to brace. The Nightborne can't win this war, but we can make sure humanity has the chance to fight it. The crew absorbed it in silence. Beyond the canopy, Neptune's pale storms turned endlessly. Farther still, the 3 massive carriers lingered like black suns, watching Dot and in the static across comms. The alien voices grew clearer, chanting, recursive, a chorus that bent. Like prayer, Lynn translated fragments, his voice hollow. Stars must be washed. Stains must be burned. Only silence is pure. By the time the Nightborne limped back toward Earth, humanity's defenses had become a necklace of broken stations and burning ships. Saturn's moons were already ash in orbit. Titan's domes flickered once in the void and then went dark forever. The Urt Gate fell 2 days later, carved apart by violet beams until its ring segments spun like a crown of knives. Without the gate, Earth was an island again, isolated, fragile, forced to stand alone. Captain Riave stood on the bridge with the weight of extinction pressing down. Her ship, once sleek and unbreakable, was now a scarred giant. Her starboard, Taurus hung ruined, blackened from decompression. Hull plating was a patchwork of burns and welded scars. Of 400 crew, barely 300 remained, yet still they flew. Because there was nowhere left to go. Contacts, Cade said, voice thin with exhaustion. Multiple formations, counting, at least 50 signatures in high Earth orbit, and one massive structure at their center. The holosphere painted it in crimson. The flagship, larger than any ghost yet encountered, kilometers long, its spine coiled like a serpent, its surface pulsed with violet veins, brighter than cities. Its field bent starlight into ripples, and around it, smaller attack forms swarmed like sparks round a furnace. That's it, Lynn said. He didn't even try to mask the tremor in his voice. The heart of their crusade, their cathedral. They brought their god to our sky. Arden muttered. The Nightborne slid closer. Battered drones straggling behind her like loyal dogs too tired to heal. The crew didn't need an order to know this was the endgame. The earth below was pale blue and defiant, its continents glowing with city light. Unaware of how close the fire had come, the flagship spoke, not to negotiate, not to demand surrender. Its voice fell across every band of human comms, saturating signals, overriding broadcasts. It was no longer distortion. It was liturgy, translated by Lynn's filters into words that humans could understand. Though not forgive, stars must be washed, flesh must be ash, only silence is holy. The attack began without pause. Beams fell like rain, cutting through orbital platforms, shredding defense satellites, vaporizing civilian craft trying to flee. Fire rolled over Earth's skies in streaks of violet. Entire constellations of human engineering went dark in minutes, shields at 40%. Ganton shouted over alarms, "We can't take another volley like that. We won't," Vey said. Her voice was steady, though her chest felt hollow. "Engineering, spin the lance. Maximum output, all safeties off." There was a pause from engineering, then a quiet reply, acknowledged. "She'll melt herself doing it." "Then let her," Vey said. The lance awakened. The Nightborne's spine glowed. Coils shrieking with magnetic fury, capacitors overloaded, venting fire through the decks. The entire ship vibrated as if trying to crawl out of its own skin. The crew gritted teeth, clung to harnesses, watched their displays dissolve into static. "Targeting lock on flagship core," Lynn said, sweat dripping down his temple. "If we hit it there, we might not kill it but we'll hurt it." "Do it," Vey said. The beam fired. This time, it wasn't a lance, it was a sunrise. A column of white brilliance cut across orbit. Brighter than dawn, brighter than anything Earth had ever seen. It slammed into the flagship's midsection, punching through chitin, tearing metal and bone apart. For the first time, the Crusader god screamed. The sound rattled through every channel, shaking glass, making bones ache. Cities on Earth below looked up and saw a second sun tearing a hole in heaven. The flagship staggered, fire bleeding from its veins. Several attack forms collapsed, their bonds broken, tumbling into the atmosphere in streaks of violet meteors. "Hit confirmed," Lynn gasped. "They're bleeding. We hurt them, but the flagship did not die." It turned, slowly, as if insulted. Its core brightened, brighter than any ghost before it. It gathered its fire into a single point. "They're charging," Arden said, eyes wide. "All power, all focus. They'll erase us." "They'll erase Earth," Vey corrected. Her mind was quiet. No fear, just clarity. "Helm," she said. "Take us in." The bridge froze. "Captain," Arden began. "Take us in," she repeated. "Full burn. Straight at the flagship. We don't have time for another lance shot. We'll make ourselves the shot." "Understood," Petrov whispered, and pushed the engines to full. The Nightborne charged. The ship roared forward, engines bleeding themselves dry. Attack forms swarmed to intercept, but Marines emptied the coilguns into them, shattering some, scattering others. Drones hurled themselves in suicidal orbits, distracting beams, buying seconds. Every deck shook with fire, alarms collapsing. Bulkheads. Crew members died at their stations and were replaced by whoever could reach the console, med bay. Overflowed. Sol worked until his gloves tore, shouting orders through smoke. Refusing to stop, in the hangars, engineers locked themselves in to stabilize reactor cores, knowing they would never make it out. The ship itself was burning alive, but still it flew, unstoppable. The flagship loomed. Its core glowed brighter, violet light spilling like oil across the sky. Range closing, Lin said. His voice was raw, hoarse, but unbroken. 100 kilometers, 50, 30. Arden turned to Vey. Rhea, if we do this, the Nightborne is gone. She was built for this, Vey said softly. She just didn't know it. The ship's hull peeled, collapsing in on itself. The lance, already fused from overuse, lit one last time. Feeding on the reactor's death, the crew clung to silence. No prayers, no curses, just breath, just heartbeat, just the knowledge that they had one last gift to give. Impact in 3, 2, the Nightborne struck. The explosion was not a blast. It was a rewriting. The lance's core, overloaded, inverted space around it for a fraction of a second. The flagship's body folded inward, then burst outward in a bloom of white fire and black shadow. Alien screams filled every frequency, then cut off in sudden, perfect silence when the light faded. The flagship was gone. Shattered pieces rained into the atmosphere, burning up as meteors. The attack forms scattered, broken, confused. Leaderless Perth's skies were clear. In orbit, only wreckage drifted. Of the Nightborne, nothing remained but fragments, a spinning torus, a broken coilgun barrel, pieces of hull drifting like relics. But the world below lived. Humanity breathed another day. Command's message went wideband, solemn and raw. United Earth ship Nightborne, destroyed in action. Enemy flagship neutralized. Human resistance continues. Their sacrifice bought us time. On Earth, people stepped outside and saw the streaks of alien wreckage burn across the night sky. They named the falling lights the Nightborne ashes. Children pointed upward and whispered that the stars were fighting for them. The war was not over, but because of one ship, humanity would face it standing. And somewhere in the void, among drifting shards and burning ghosts, the silence was no longer pure. It carried the echo of defiance, the memory of a ship that had burned brighter than dawn.